So I'm Bill Dakin, the moderator for the Green Mountain Unified School District. I welcome you to the annual meeting of the Green Mountain Unified School District. And as we're starting our annual meeting, let's start by saying the Pledge of Allegiance. The flag is behind us out on the flagpole. So we will begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have a good array of members of the Green Mountain Unified School District, Green Mountain Unified School District board here, plus we have principals and our superintendent. And without me introducing all of them, I'm going to go around the table and I'm going to start and let each one of you introduce yourself to the crowd. So,
Scott Kendall, representative, director.
And I'm Kate Niffer, I'm from Cavendish.
Josh Schroeder from Chester.
Cheryl Hammond, business manager.
Lauren Fearman, superintendent.
Adrian Williams, Baltimore.
Lois Crum, Chester.
Rick Alexander, Chester. Jeff Hans, Chester.
Katie Murphy, Chester.
Steve Brown, Cavendish.
and we have two of our principals here who are,
John Broley, principal, Green Mountain Union High School.
Kate Weed, assistant principal here at Green Mountain.
so we welcome you all. This meeting is open to all who are here, but those who can participate and vote need to be voters from the towns of Andover, Cavendish, Baltimore, and Chester. And those who are voters are welcome to be identified to speak and to vote. So we will start with the warning. And as I'm going to go through the warning, I remind you that we have our school district reports. If you don't have a copy, there's some on the table, and you are certainly welcome to grab a copy and review along with us all. So this is a warning for the Green Mountain Unified School District Annual School District Meeting, Green Mountain Union High School, Thursday, February 29, 2024 at 6 o'clock p.m. The legal voters of Green Mountain Unified School District, consisting of the towns of Andover, Baltimore, Cavendish, and Chester, are hereby warned to meet to transact at that time business not involving voting by Australian ballot or voting required by law to be by ballot. The business to be transacted at this meeting include the following. And we will go through each of these articles and we will entertain a motion to adopt and we'll vote on them. So we'll begin with Article 1, to elect a moderator for a one-year term beginning July 1, 2024. Is there a nomination?
I'd like to nominate Bill Dakin. Jeff Hans. Second.
Moved by Jeff, seconded by Josh. Are there other nominations? There being no further nominations, then we'll vote to see if you will elect Bill Dakin as moderator for the Unified School District term beginning July 1, 2024 for a one-year period. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The moderator has been elected. Article 2, to elect a clerk for a one-year term beginning July 1, 2024. Is there a nomination? Who's our current town clerk? Excuse me, not town clerk. So, Lois Furlan?
No, you're the board clerk. Amber Wilson.
On the, this is, this
Yeah,
is
yeah,
the
Amber.
town.
You can nominate her. That'd be fine.
I'd like to nominate Amber Wilson.
All right. Moved by Josh, seconded by Scott to nominate Amber Wilson. Are there other nominations for clerk of the district? There being no further nominations, we'll vote. All in favor of Amber Wilson to be clerk for a one-year term beginning July 1, 2024, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Amber is the clerk for the ensuing year. Article 3, to elect a treasurer for a one-year term beginning July 1, 2024. Who is the current treasurer?
Wayne Wheelock.
And Mr. Wheelock is here. Thank you for being here, sir. Is there a nomination for treasurer for a one-year term?
I'd like to nominate Wayne.
Nomination by Josh to Wayne, seconded by
Katie.
Thanks. Are there further nominations for treasurer? There being none, all in favor of Wayne Wheelock from Baltimore as treasurer of the school district, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Wayne, you are again treasurer of the district. Article 4. So the voters of the Green Mountain Unified School District approve setting its annual honorarium for each of its school directors at $1,200. Is there a motion for Article 4? Since it may not come from, since you'd like to make a motion,
Wayne.
Wayne. You move the article,
Yes.
seconded by,
I'll second.
moved and seconded, Wayne, Diane. Is there any discussion on the motion for the approval of an honorarium of $1,200 per school director for the upcoming year? There being no discussion, then we'll vote. All in favor of approving an annual honorarium for each of the school directors at $1,200, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Article 4 passes. Article 5. Shall the voters of the Green Mountain Unified School District approve setting its annual honorarium for the treasurer at $750? Is there a motion on Article 5? So moved by Adrian, seconded by, thank you. Is there any discussion on approving the honorarium for the treasurer at $750? There being no discussion, we'll vote. All those in favor of setting the honorarium for the treasurer at $750 for the ensuing year, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Article 5 passes. Article 6. Shall the voters of the Green Mountain Unified School District approve setting the annual honorarium for its school district clerk at $125? So moved,
Second.
seconded. Done?
Yep.
All right. Moved and seconded to set the honorarium for the school district clerk at $125. Is there any discussion? All in favor of the article to set the school district honorarium, school district clerk honorarium at $125, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. It is so set at $125. Article 7. Shall the voters of the Green Mountain Unified School District authorize its board of school directors to borrow money pending receipt of payments from member towns as provided in Title 16, Chapter 11, Section 711, issuance of notes of money orders payable not later than 1 year from date for the purpose of paying its expenses?
So moved.
So moved by Lois, seconded by,
I'll second.
there's Lois over here. You got it, Lois.
Yeah, I got it.
All right. Moved and seconded to authorize the board to borrow money pending receipt of payments from member towns as provided in Title 16, Chapter 11, Section 711, by issuance of notes of money orders payable not later than 1 year from date for the purpose of paying its expenses. Is there any discussion? All in favor of Article 7 as read, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Article 7 passes. Article 8, to hear and act on the reports of the Green Mountain Unified School District Board of Directors for the school year ending June 30, 2023. This booklet has reports, and this, as you may vote yea or nay, you vote in favor of approving the reports in the booklet. For the end of the book. Is there a motion on Article 8?
I move that motion.
Yay, yay. And seconded by, moved and seconded to hear and act on the reports from Green Mountain Unified School District Board of Directors for the school year ending June 30, 2023. All in favor of the article as read, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Based on prior articles, we waived any opportunity for discussion. So that said, we'll move on to Article 9. To transact any other business deemed proper when met, not involving the expenditure of school district funds or any other business acted upon in the preceding articles. Is there any other business deemed proper that anyone would like to raise at this point in the annual meeting?
Mr. Moderator,
You are.
I am Joseph Fromberger.
Yes, sir.
I'm a voter in Andover. And under this article, I would like to recognize the service that our superintendent has provided us, not only as a principal in this school, but also as superintendent for all of the schools in this district. The service has been exemplary, and having been a longtime member of this board, I can appreciate the hard work he's put into it. And so I think, the district ought to express its appreciation of her good work. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion?
I just have a question, if it's open to the board.
And you
Or
are.
is this not the right time? This is Kathy Bertino from Chester. And I read these reports, and I've been in and out of school for various things. I think it's a lovely school, and I'm glad we have a quality opportunity for our kids to get educated. But there's a couple things I question. And one is the population of the school is small, but the cost goes up every year, and there's a small taxpayer base that pays for it. And I wonder how many things are done during the year that could hold the cost down without compromising the education, but respecting the taxpayers. One of the things that bothers me is that there are two languages offered in a school this size. French is a luxury language. Spanish is an important language. I've traveled all over the world. I took 4 years of French, and I can tell you it's Spanish that I use, not French. And that is a whole another teacher classroom expense that the taxpayers pay, and will it ever be utilized by the students? Another thing that we wonder about, and we're only asking this because we've not delved into this, at what, $41,000 a year, we maintain an office in Ludlow for the business office. Is there not any, in all the schools that are a part of this district, is there no space for the business office to move in and maintain in a decent way without incurring more expense for the taxpayers? And that would not take away from the students. And I'm just putting these out as questions because when we read this report, we see how the cost goes up every year, but we never see any steps that are taken to hold the cost down. So perhaps if the things that are done that do bring the cost down were reported so the taxpayers could see it, it might be more beneficial. Because right now you can't see it. You just see it go up per student every year. And the number of students goes down every year. So I'm just putting that out as a question.
Thank you. So we've had a couple of voters raise some points at this Article 9. Mr. Fromberger and Ms. Garatino. As a moderator, I welcome your comments. On behalf of what Joe said, I may have hastily moved on to Kathy, but you were certainly within your rights to thank the superintendent for her service, both as principal and superintendent. And I don't, if there are any comments from the body about either of what Mr. Fromberger said or Mrs. Giratina said?
Well, I would like to agree with Joe on Gordon has been an asset.
And I would say the same thing. And quality of the work ethic, abilities to work in different schools. That's what I've seen. Very, very, it's amazing to see with the different schools, different people, different groups. Thank you.
Are there further comments about the points that have been raised under this article? Or are there any other comments that might be made under this article? There being none, let's move to, we thank you both for raising those points. Let's move to Article 10. To establish a new date for the annual meeting. Next annual meeting. Thank you. So there is that article on the floor. Is there a motion for setting a date for the next annual meeting of the Green Mountain Unified School District?
Mr. Moderator,
Mr. Fromberger.
I am Mr. Fromberger, and I will make the same motion I made last year, which says that the next annual meeting shall be on the Thursday before the town meeting day. And I think the date is the 28th of February.
27,
February 28th,
27.
27th, excuse me, 2025. So a motion has been made and seconded to set the date for the next annual meeting of the Green Mountain Unified School District for Thursday, February 27th, 2025. Is there any discussion on that motion? There being none, then we will vote to see if the body will approve of the motion to set the next date for the annual meeting of Green Mountain Unified School District for February 27th, 2025, which is a Thursday, the time to be determined. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. We have a new meeting date. We can adjourn this annual school district meeting with a motion, but we're not going to close the meeting because we're going to move into the public information meeting. So as we do that, is there a motion to adjourn the annual school district meeting as we move into the next meeting? Moved, seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
So we are adjourned. So let's move into the next meeting. And before we do that, the warning actually is for the vote by Australian ballot. And I'm going to read that first. This is a warning for the Green Mountain Unified School District voting by Australian ballot. Voting is to occur on March 5, 2024, this coming Tuesday, at Andover Town Hall, 8 a.m. to 7 p.m., Baltimore Town Hall, 10 a.m. to 7 o'clock p.m., Rogersville Fire Department, 10 o'clock a.m. to 7 o'clock p.m., Chestertown Office, 9 o'clock a.m. 7 o'clock p.m. And the voting will include this Article 1. Shall the voters of Green Mountain Unified School District approve the school board of directors to expend $17,440,030, which is the amount the school board of directors has determined to be necessary for the ensuing fiscal year. It is estimated the proposed budget, if approved, will result in education spending of $13,079.03 per long-term weighted rent LTW close per equalized pupil. We're not going to vote on that tonight, but that's what will be on the ballot. In addition to the budget on the ballot on March 5, we will also vote on the vacant school district seats that are up for reelection. So that is the warning on the Australian ballot, next Tuesday. Moving on, we'll do the warning, the public information hearing. The legal vote is the Green Mountain Unified School District consisting of the towns of Andover, Baltimore, Gavel, and Chester are hereby warned to meet for public information hearing on the proposed budget for 2024-2025, Thursday, February 29, 2024 at 6:00 p.m. We have reached that point, and I'm going to turn this meeting over to your chair, who may continue public information. Thank you.
All right, so I call the informational meeting here, meeting to order at 6:21 p.m. And for roll call, I think the only director missing is Lisa Saunders, Lauren, Cheryl, John Bradley, and Kate. All right, and then I have to list the public somewhere over there. Okay, great.
So we will go through the budget presentation that we've shared with the board and has been shared out in public at several occasions. So we will share with you and answer questions about it. Pull that up on the screen here. This has all been available to the public online for the last month or so as well. So just as we go through and talk about it, some of our terms, general state support grant, which is the amount of money in the budget revenues that we need to raise by taxes. You've heard us talk about average daily membership, number of publicly funded resident students in the district as a 20-day full-time presence from the 11th through the 30th day of the school year. A student is one ADM if publicly funded for the full 20-day period. We now talk about the long-term weighted measurement with membership, which is the average ADM for the current and prior years, plus any state-placed students from the prior year. And then the yield, which is part of the roller coaster we've been on at the moment, which is set by the tax department on December 1st, represents the amount needed for every $1 of homestead tax for $100 of equalized property value. The yield is never finalized until June, once all the budgets are in. Most of the time, we don't talk about this very much because we get a statement from the state on December 1st of what the yield is likely to be. We use that for all of our calculations, and while it may change a little, it is only a little. And by the time we get to June, this year's, we'll talk about a little bit later on, we have been on a yield roller coaster that they told us in December what it was, and then they told us on January was something else, and they told us February that it was two different things, and that affects how we talk about what the effect of the budget will be. So the other piece that has affected our discussion of the budget this year is Act 127, which took effect for this year. It is the first year of this new funding formula. And the new funding formula creates a way for, the intent was to redistribute the property taxes for education raised throughout the state to make sure that areas that struggle more with poverty, with a rural area, and have students who are needier get more money, and our wealthier school districts get less. There are districts that have been advantaged by this funding formula change. We're one of them. And there are districts that have been disadvantaged by it. So as this document has said, this is the first time in 20 years that the way the funding is done has been changed. Pretty much just got to the point where a lot of people understood the old weighted funding formula, and now it is different. So We are benefiting from Act 127 and the additional weight categories that were added. This means that we are given credit in effect for more students than we actually have, because our students are seen as being needier than the average student. So the funding formula has always been that students are weighted, so that to the fact that you have 10 or 20 students in one particular group doesn't necessarily mean that you are given weighted for 20 students. You can be weighted for more if those students have particular needs, and weighted for less if they have fewer needs. Elementary school students are always weighted less than high school students, because it costs more to educate our high school students every year than it costs to educate our elementary school students. This isn't something we created. This is the state of Vermont's funding formula, and the funding formula changed this year. And as a result of that funding formula change, we have been given credit for having more students this year than we were given credit for last year. And that created a one-time opportunity for us to be able to spend more money within our local school district while keeping our base tax rate for education the same. Whereas districts that were disadvantaged by this would have to spend more tax money in order to level fund, because they are being given credit for fewer students. I understand that that is confusing. I understand that a great many people disagree with that as a way of approaching things. That's what it is. So we'll give you some information about how our calculations are made. Here are our student numbers at the moment. Within the two elementary schools, we have 316 students, 80 at Cavendish, 236 at Chester Andover. Those numbers have varied from any particular day. We have people come in and go out over the course of the year. That's where we were when we pulled these slides together. At the high school, 295, and I think we have been up a little over 300, and then below at 295, depending on the day that we pull it forward. This is the total budget that you can see within that folder. The difference, the total that we are proposing, $17,440,030. That is a difference of 1.6 million. It is an increase of 10% over what we spent last year. However, as we'll get to, while the increase in spending, it is not an increase in the base tax rate as a result of this funding formula. And we're glad to go through and answer some of the questions that were raised earlier about why we have increases when we have when we have fewer students. A great deal of that is a result of we talk about here, our special education assessment has increased by nearly $1 million over the current year. We have more students who need special education services, and the cost of those services increase. So while we have fewer total number of students, we have more students with special needs over the last few years than we used to have. So the cost for an individual student continues to go up, and the cost for our students with special needs are things that we want to provide and we're required to provide. So we have a total of, within our district, within our SU, 264 students on IEPs. I don't have the exact number for Blue Mountain, but within the SU, which is a high percentage of our total number of students. The other increases that we've seen for this year, 16.4% increase in the health insurance premiums. Over the last 5 years, our health insurance premiums have gone up by nearly 60%. Yeah. The health insurance benefits are again set at the state level, and when the premiums increase, we are required to pay them. We also included this year an additional $470,000 in the capital reserve to address some of our various maintenance issues. And part of why this board made the decision to do that is, as a result of the change in the funding formula, we can put that additional money in this year and this year only, without having it raise the base tax rate. So let's move on to talking a little bit about that base tax rate. Cheryl, do you want to go through this?
Sure. So the budget, as Lauren said, is the 17 million. So the general state support grant, the $15,735,508, that is the amount of money that we need to raise by taxes in order to fund this budget. So our what used to be called equalized pupil is now a long-term weighted pupil. So you'll see in the 23-24 budget, we had 668 students. When they converted that to the new formula, we ended up with 1,047 just to compare it. This year, we ended up with 1,203, which if you compare it to the 668, it's almost double. So that's why you see that cost per pupil drop from 20,000 to 13,000 for this year. The yield, the roller coaster yield that we're on, we are using the $9,769, which I found out today is no longer correct. But it's only up a little bit. But we'll talk about that a little bit
And
later.
when the yield goes up, which it has a little bit, that actually reduces our rates. So as the yield rises, things are better for us.
So right now, we're looking at a projected tax rate of $1.33.9, $1.34, which is pretty much level funded from what we had last year, which was ultimately the we go to the next slide. So then we come into our CLA, our common level of appraisal. Everybody is familiar with that. This has been an impact across the state of Vermont. It's not a local issue by any means. Andover is down to 70.11. Baltimore is up because they just had a reappraisal, so they're at 97.57. Cavendish 72.55 and Chester 78.09. So we have to divide that into our base tax rate to get what the new tax rate is going to be. The adjusted tax rate, I guess is what we call it. And so below it, you'll see the projected for Andover is $1.91, Baltimore $1.37, Cavendish $1.85, and Chester $1.71. And if you look to the far right there, that row where you see the cursor, when the state is talking about a 18 to 20% increase, they're talking about an average. This is the number that they're talking about. So this is where your towns land in that conversation that has been greatly talked about at the state level, and it is at the state level, and I think that's been some confusion for people that it's not happening to all districts, it's an average. And this is what we project your numbers for the districts.
And we want to stress that there is a difference between the CLA and the increases that you're seeing in that as a result of the difference between the current consideration of how much homes are worth and what they were worth when they were appraised, and your local education tax. So the statement that the projected tax rate for Andover is going to go up by 15% is not because of your local education budget. That's not what's raising it. What is raising it is the CLA, which we do not control. So in our next slide, if I can, actually the one.
Yeah, so this just has a little bit more explanation of what the change means and where it comes from.
So this is the article you'll see on the ballot, which the amount of money and the long-term weighted equalized pupil. This is our yield roller coaster that we have been on. You want to run through this?
Yep. So December 1st, that's the letter that we get from the Department of Taxes that sets the yield for our budget season. We started out at 9,342. And then on January 9th, they looked at it and they said, wait, we've overestimated the grand list. It needs to drop a little bit. So they dropped it. This is the bottom line is what our budget would be had it stayed where it is. On January 31st, there was a collective gasp in Montpelier as they realized Act 127 wasn't playing out how they thought. If Act 127 stayed in place as it was written, your base tax rate would have been $1.84. So they said that's not going to work. January 6th, they changed the yield again. What we're using is the February 8th, the 7,969 to get our $1.34. Today I got information that they're working at 9,785. Not a big change. It's not going to have a huge impact on your rate. If Act 127, if they didn't have any of the caps or any of the discounts, because the disadvantaged districts and supervisory unions are getting tax credits. We are not getting a tax credit, but if they gave nobody a tax credit, the yield would be more around $10,000, which would drop that tax rate a little bit. They are doing some cash flow projections, and the one they have is just around $10,000. So when that yield goes up, your tax rate goes down. So we're looking for that. So the hope, and you've probably heard about districts postponing their budget and reopening them to look at them. So they're giving some of those disadvantaged districts opportunities to go back where they had maybe have added some things because they were going to get protected by a 5% cap, which is no longer going to happen, to reduce their budget. So if they reduce their budget, the statewide tax fee for the general state support grant is going to go down, and so yield will go up if that goes down. So there's still hope that we can get a little bit better than where we are, but this is the information that we have at this time.
So with the changes to Act 127, how does that affect us? Why are we now, you've added $470,000 to the budget because you think it's not going to affect the tax rate?
Yep.
It has affected the tax rate because they've just done away with the cap.
But we weren't at the cap. The
Well,
cap is at 5%.
We're at 10% now,
No,
aren't we?
the cap is not the increase in spending. The cap is on the increase to your base tax rate. The cap said that you would not,
Okay.
that no matter what you did,
You're right.
your base tax rate would not increase by more than 5%. So the disadvantaged districts said,
Yeah.
great, we will ignore the fact that we're disadvantaged. We will raise our spending so that our tax rate is in fact going to go up by 10 or 15%.
Right.
But because you capped it at 5, we don't have to worry about that.
Right.
And that's when the state looked at it and said,
Yeah.
that's not what we meant for this. We meant for this to happen.
Sure.
So they passed House Bill 850
Right.
last week that said that tax cap is gone, disadvantaged districts. So you might want to go back in and have another look at your budget so that you're going to bring it down further and not wind up with that 10, 15% thing that you put in place. It doesn't affect us because we were never at, or we're not above that 5% cap anyway, because we are advantaged by this, so that the intent of this change was to allow districts like ours to maintain our base tax rate and increase the spending for our local schools.
So you're telling us that Act 58 has no effect on what we're doing with our budget?
The past bill, the 850,
The bill that amended
yes,
127.
has no effect on us.
It has a positive effect on us in that it set the yield higher
Yes.
because it eliminated the cap, which allowed that yield to go up and our tax rate to, because we were over our base rate from last year, and this allowed us to come
Well,
up.
the yield number has always been a mystery anyway.
And it's going to, once everybody gets their budgets in June, they'll look at it and it will change again. And we're just hopeful, and I think it will come to our advantage.
Thank you.
So this tension between the news from the state, which is talking about that 18% average of increases, which is due primarily not to the education budgets of supervisory unions and school districts, but to the common level of appraisal. We do not have control over that. It adjusts locally assessed property values to the estimated fair market value. Each town is treated equally and uniformly, regardless of when they last appraised. CLA is declining because most of our towns haven't been appraised for a while, and property values in and around Vermont have been.
And we can't find anybody to appraise us.
Well, there are only two. There are two places, two businesses in the state of Vermont that can conduct the appraisals. So for most towns, there's years-long waiting lists before those things.
Thank you.
So taxes are going up, and I keep saying, but your base tax rate as a result of your local education budget is not raising your taxes. This is a slide designed to show you that I'm not crazy when I say so you can see here the CLA from 2023, the town involved, the prior year's CLA, the current rate after the CLA, the anticipated rate, the tax increase, the decline or increase for the CLA, and then what the base tax rate is, and then what your increase would be as a result of that combination of the CLA decline or increase, and then our base tax rate. So for Andover, and we did this with, and nobody has $100,000 home, but it's done for every $100,000 value so that you can do the math. Then it's an easier thing to do, to think about this is the amount for $100,000 worth of house than when we put in for a $450,000 house or something like that. So for every $100,000 house value in Andover, the tax rate is going to go up by $255.37.
Well, that's a really tough sell for our Andover representative, you know.
It is, absolutely. And
Yes, it is.
the part of this budget that is affecting that is a decrease of 0.90. Our budget is not what's making that increase be 255.37. Because of our budget, the increase will be 254.47, not 255.37. The local education budget, because of the Act 127 for the Green Mountain District, it's essentially level funded, but is in fact slightly lower because of this budget. This budget is not raising the taxes. And I understand the difficulty for people to see that, but that's the reality of how all of these numbers are working for this year.
That's a very good chart. Can I have a copy?
You can, and this is online
It's online?
already.
Okay.
This has been up online for the last
Thank you.
month and a half. You can have a copy of it. Glad to print one out for you, Joe. Carol, do you want to?
If I can get my computer to work.
No, I didn't remember this well.
Right. And we do in fact understand and agree. I live in Chester, the house on Main Street. I would like for my taxes not to be going up. And I understand the frustration of having that happen. I understand the desire to say, no, don't have that happen. Voting no to your local education budget isn't going to affect it at all. All
Well,
voting no
if-
to your local
if you're-
education budget will do is mean that you won't fund your school.
If your budget gets turned down and gets not approved before July 1, you get to spend 90% of your previous budget. That's your backup plan.
That is, and if the budget is turned down, your tax rates are going to go up by this amount regardless of having turned the budget down. So turning the budget down is not going to lower your property taxes. It will in fact raise them by 90 cents. So just to go through the rest of it, the TRSU budget, which is included in this, funded through assessment to the two districts. We break the budget down into categories of central office, transportation, special education, and tech support. Central office budget has an increase because we restructured the tech department. So you will see in the Green Mountain District a decrease in the tech budget and an increase in that at the TRSU, and then an increase in the assessment. It's essentially we're just putting the money into where it belongs. It's easier for us to have our tech budget held through for all of our schools in the same location rather than in the two separate districts. The transportation budget has a decrease because Green Mountain's budget buses have been paid off, and the special education budget goes up. We work very hard at controlling those costs.
Please speak to the question that came earlier about.
Sure. So it is true that there is an expense, which in our overall budget is relatively small, but it is an expense to spend money to rent the facility at Fletcher Farm in order to have central offices in that location. You could put your central office people into other schools. Then it's not central office anymore. And if you have people in multiple locations, it will not be as efficient as it is to have people in a single location. And central office needs to be funded by both Ludlow Mount Holly and by the Green Mountain District. So if we put central office into a building, that building is going to need to we would have to pay that building rent, which would then still be assessed to both of the districts. It would be a reduction, wouldn't argue with that. But the decisions we have made about it is that in terms of cost and benefit, there is a benefit to having your business manager, your superintendent, your curriculum director, and your various personnel located centrally for your schools rather than at one end or the other, and having them in the same location rather than in multiple buildings. And that's something for our districts to make a decision about. Is the cost of $41,000 a year worth the benefit in a better functioning central office? So far, the decision has been that it is. And at some point, these boards may decide that it's not. I will, next year when I'm sitting there instead of here, I will be continuing to argue that it is worth that relatively small cost to have everybody centrally located so that if we were to say, put this into, we wouldn't put it in the Mount Holly School, they're overcrowded. But if central office were in Mount Holly, that would be a challenge for the people in Chester who want to have meetings with central office, for people to be traveling that far. In general, and for a while, central office was located here in Chester, wasn't it? Where yeah, that it was where the Jiffy Mart is. And for people who are further away, when central office isn't actually central, it creates challenges for people. Not insurmountable, and you can always decide that you don't want to spend the money for that. We did go through something 3 years ago with one of the buildings at central office, we call it the Roost, where we have some of our curriculum people are, which is just across the driveway from our building, and decided to cut costs by a whopping $9,000 by closing that down and then moving curriculum people into Ludlow instead of having them in the office, having offices shared. It works. But for me and for the people who are there, it's worth they're not charging us rent anymore. So we're paying just the utilities for the building. So it's worth the $3,000 in utilities that we pay to have everybody present when we need to meet and have discussions and not have to be driving around and then charging for mileage.
This is something that we discuss. We don't judge. When we're doing the budget, we're all taxpayers. We're all very cognizant about all these questions. So I just want to assure you that this is not something that we take lightly.
Yes, and Fletcher Farms is, anyway, my belief, I'm not a real estate agent, but it is my belief that the rates they are charging us are not market.
One thing to add, that the central office, I visit on occasion for various board and just say hi to folks. And there I can, it is interesting because you can say hi to 11 to 12 different workers as that building supports 11 to 12 different offices in the space. If we calculate an annual charge of 41.9, we get a monthly charge of about 3,500. We divide that by 11 to 12 different offices, we're looking at about $291 per office. So those are some quick numbers. Now, $291 per office to be able to collaborate, it may make things easier. But just to assure you, we do look at these as each individual director is looking forward to representing their towns the best way they can. However, your presence tonight is very welcome, and all of your comments are very helpful for feedback. So that's just my 2 cents.
And along some of those lines, another thing I would say is that almost every year, we didn't this year because we had so many other things going on, but almost every year we'll wind up putting into the budget the request for new and better furniture in central office. And every year the boards look at that and say, no, because we don't want to spend that extra couple $1,000 so that the chairs are easier to move around. And you know, it would be nice to not have to drag the chairs that don't move easily from one place to another. Can we run well without them? Yes, we can. So those everybody's always looking at that cost benefit decision. We heard somebody refer to the central office once as an opulent palace. It's a very nice building, but it is not an opulent palace. It runs very nicely and it works well for us, but that is always something we can consider, as is everything else within our budget. We'll go through all of those things. That is essentially the end of it. If you have other questions, we're glad to try to answer them and go through details now. We're going to show you a brand new online service that we're piloting this year for people to be able to see some of this information. But just in general, if you have questions, you can contact Cheryl about it. You can also contact me. I'm happy to try to answer it. I've said everywhere, and if I can't answer it, I'll direct you to Cheryl, who will be able to give you those numbers. So I'm going to stop sharing that, and we're going to show you something called ClearGov. You should have access to that. And Cheryl's going to talk you through this, which the link for this is on our website. So everybody, if you have a functioning computer, you can access what we're about to show.
I'm going to show you a couple different things because it's under this important messages. We're going to go under the TRSU digital budget book. Before we go there, if you come down through here, all the information that we've shared with you is on this link. The PowerPoint that Lauren did is there, as well as the other documents that we use to build the budget. And it's a little bit more detailed, a lot more detailed than what comes in this book here. But we'll go into the digital booklet right now. So what we've essentially done under annual booklet, this is the cover page. So if you look, it's very similar to what you've got on your booklet, as well as the public information on the first page. But when you go to this drop down here, the warning, the minutes of the meeting, the director's report, superintendent's report, all these reports that were in your booklet are here electronically online. So you would just click on any one of them, and it's the same report that you see in your booklet, maybe a little bit easier to read if you are a computer person. And then if you go over to departments, here's everything for the Two Rivers Supervisory Union. And there's some narrative along with it, as well as all the things I'm going to show you in Green Mountain, but I'm going to stick with Green Mountain for tonight. So if you hit this arrow, there's information for each of the individual districts, and then things that come under a district-wide category, like our nurses, our food service, our assessments, special ed, they're all considered district budget. So the rest of it's all individual and specific to the school. And then food service this year, the state has asked us to pull it out separately, and so that's what we've done, so they have their own budget this year. But we're gonna look at the Green Mountain Unified budget. Then we have some narrative here to start with, and which is pretty much everything we just talked about. This is the budget, overall budget. We have a 3-year comparison. This right here in the lighter green is because we are only more than halfway through the year. But as we update this information, it'll show you how we spent our budget and where we are. And then we come down and we look at it by function. This graph is not quite what I want it to be because it repeats regular education 3 times as it looks at each of the individual budgets. So if you tap on any one of these, it gives you the information and you can go around. You can take a different look at that. So you can come over here and click on this. And now you have it as a bar graph. So you go down a little further. This is a different view of it. This will give you your dollar amounts with each of those sections down there. I think this one has some other, well, you can change it for your different view. However, when you go back up here, you still have your dollars that go with it. And then you come down here to the spreadsheet breakdown. And this is what makes up each of those numbers. So we have our regular education. Okay, so this is by function. So this gives you a high level of each of those different departments. And so it's essentially rolled up all the information below it. So this will go down through, and it's Cavendish is first, and then there's Chester Andover, and it will go down through the list. And when you don't want to see it anymore, you pop it back up here, and we can continue on. And this is generally how we look at things, the expenditures by expense type. We call it object code. So you have your salaries, your assessments, your benefits, and then it goes around the pie here. Again, you can look at it as a bar chart. You have this other graph that has the dollar amounts associated to it. And you can change that view of it, as well as the breakdown. And this one will give you much more detail because we are looking at the object, which is the salary or the benefits associated with it. And again, it starts with the Cavendish and goes through. So this is the detailed breakdown of the budget. We had to put the G in front of it because we were trying to combine too many things. And so we had to add a letter in order to get it to separate out properly. So as you go down, this is what's in your annual booklet. And I just put it there so people have some reference. Our 3-year comparison, I did update this to the latest thing. So this is different than the booklet. So this, if you look at this one, it's in your annual booklet. When you get down here, it compares on this line 27. You see that the tax rate over the years. And if you look, it actually has gone down. $1.51 for 22, $1.40 for 23, and $1.34 for 25. So pretty good if you look at it that way. Revenues, again, this is what we've received to date from the booklet. This is where we get our money from. So you see the biggest share here is our state money, which is the tax money. Local share would be things like tuition, other things that come not from the state, local restricted. So all of that is local money, not raised by taxes. And again, you have the different views. You can switch it to here. Same thing here. And this is the common level appraisal. This is so similar to what is in that booklet. It's the same chart that we put on the thing. And so this is accessible to everyone because it is online. So the other cool thing about this, still haven't figured out how to easily get back. Oh, okay, here we go. To the top here. So you can print it. So it has a print function. So you can go in and you can pick. You have to put your email in because they'll email it to you.
If I wanted to do your job, Cheryl, I would get you to train me, but this is too much information for me to just digest. I gotta tell you. And
Well, I
I've
want
looked at
feedback
those
because
things.
this is a pilot year, and if we don't have people using it and utilizing it and getting anything out of it, then we're not going to pay for it.
Well, you do a nice job.
Joe, the nice thing is you can actually customize reports. So
Yeah.
you're going to be able to pick and choose the information that you want to focus on and create
And down here would be the financial part of it. I will warn you, this is the kink we're working out. Those spreadsheets that I dropped down, when you asked for it to be printed, it comes to you electronically, all those reports are out. We haven't figured out how to collapse them in the printing mode.
I'm gonna come to the office and have you print it for me.
We can do that. We can do that. But we certainly do ask for people to go in, to explore this, to give us feedback, to give us ideas of things they'd like to see on there. We've talked about doing some organizational charts for the different schools, so the people that work there. We can put bond information in there. Julie and Emma, our curriculum people, are looking to put some student information on statistical in there. But we definitely want feedback. I want to know if people are using it. I want to know what people think about it, what would make it better, if it's working, if it's not working.
Looks great. Is the Office of Education using ClearGov? Is the state of Vermont using ClearGov? Because this is a kind of revelation.
No.
Too bad.
They probably have their own thing. I don't know anybody, any other school district in the state yet.
This is very well presented information here.
This was one of the main reasons I joined the board 3 years ago, was to help increase transparency from the board to taxpayers. And this is amazing. This is absolutely that. I'm super proud. Thank you.
Other questions on this? And anybody feel free to call me if you have questions, if you want help with this, if you just have a budget question.
We're getting late.
Not you, Joe.
You know, I will ask a question if I have one.
I know.
Are there any more comments, questions, concerns? Hearing none. Is there anything else you guys up? Hearing none, take a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
So this meeting's adjourned at 7:02.